Tonight, Trump slumps to the finish line, but will Hillary face a no-win situation even if she wins the White House? And can we shorten the process, please? Then Obamacare sticker shock. Premiums are about to skyrocket. How big is the problem, and can it be fixed? And later, the Feds shake up the Eric Garner civil rights case. Is Washington shopping for a prosecution? And what should the focus of the investigation be? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. Those topics and much more with our panel tonight. Brad Gersman is here as a political consultant and a founding partner of Gotham Government Relations. Next to him is Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. And across the way, Noam Bramson, known as the Democratic mayor of New Rochelle. And we're going to begin tonight with the race for the White House, also known as the Trump slump to the finish line. As we count down to the final 2 weeks of the campaign, we're just 14 days away from the election now. Not a lot changing in the race, just more bad news for Trump. He's down 5 nationally in a new CNN poll, down about 5.5 in the poll averages. Clinton is now between an 86 and 93% favorite in polling forecasts and on the betting markets. Today, Colin Powell became the latest big-name Republican to officially abandon his party's nominee. Hacked emails show Powell called Trump a national disgrace and an international pariah. Powell now officially saying he will vote for Hillary Clinton. Which begs the question, assuming Trump loses, how will he impact the GOP going forward? Will Trump become the prototypical Republican candidate, or will the party revert to more establishment candidates? Brad, are we looking at new nominees for the Republicans in the image of Trump going forward?
No, absolutely not. But that doesn't mean Trump goes away, and it doesn't mean that the influence that he's had will go away, because there will be some people that will follow that depending on the district that they live in. If their district polled well for Trump, then obviously if you're running in those districts in a lower level office, non-presidential, you may be more Trump-like. So yeah, there's something to be learned for candidates out there in the Republican Party, what to do, what not to do. Hopefully it's mostly what not to do. But on the other hand, there's no question he's changed the game.
No, do you agree?
I actually disagree with Brad. I think this is a sign of things to come. The Republican Party is broken, not in the sense that it can't win elections, but in the sense that it's not capable of governing. And what Trump has done is basically expose the fact that a sizable portion of the Republican base is alt-right white nationalists. Republican elites have ridden that horse to victory year after year and then kind of put them in the stable to munch on oats. But now the horse and the rider have reversed positions. And if you look at polls right now, all it takes is Trump criticizing Paul Ryan for Paul Ryan's approval to tank among Republicans. If you think that's going away, I don't think you've been observing what's going on in the last 12 months.
Dominic, are we going to start to see the sort of Trump-like behavior from candidates on both sides, where it's a little more braggadocio, the truth doesn't seem to matter quite as much?
Based on the results, and I'm forecasting a little bit, I don't think so. What this campaign has taught us is that there was a time when this all worked for Mr. Trump, and perhaps the prototypes would have been in the making, literally, to do the exact obnoxious, arrogant behavior. But with Trump folding like a cheap suit, if you will, I don't think we're going to see a copycat.
All right. One thing we can almost all agree on, I assume, is that these elections just take forever. Ted Cruz was the first candidate to officially enter the race. That was 19 months ago in March of 2015. It's already been more than 8.5 months since the first votes in Iowa and New Hampshire. Now, in a new poll, 81% of Americans say they wish the election was over already, and it's hard to blame them. Can we shorten this process, Mr. Mayor? Is there any way to functionally do that?
Not without getting rid of the primary and caucus process. I mean, the things that upset people most about the election process are actually the things people say they want. An open, transparent process in which rank and file voters have an opportunity to select their nominee. We had a shorter election cycle when the conventions were actually sessions in which party elites got together and chose the nominee. That's a shorter way of doing things. But I don't see how you can shorten it if you're going to have an open process.
Unless you put the primary, more primary dates lumped on top of each other, and thereby shortening the process and not running from state to state to state. But I do agree that there's a reason for it being as long as it is, because we're running for the President of the United States, and you want to be able to do as much due diligence on the candidate so the two best Americans can come back out in the end.
Or in this case.
And I think we've proven that in this election season. We have the two finest.
Tongue firmly in cheek.
Yes.
But other countries, Dominic, manage to do their elections a lot faster than we do. And we're running the risk of these permanent elections where we never get any governing done because everybody's already running for office.
And assuming that Hillary Clinton wins this election, her troubles are just beginning. when you look at the email situation and some of the news stories that are coming out. So we may be dealing with a permanent campaign. Some folks say Obama was almost in a campaign after being elected. We have seen, in fairness to the process, I agree with the points that were made, we have seen where they tried to cut the process. But it's a problem where New Hampshire and Iowa want to be first primary, first caucus, and every time they change it or shorten it, Iowa and New Hampshire, those voters change their process so that they're always the first caucus and the first primary.
You know, it's not just presidential politics. Remember, we've got federal elections every 2 years. And when you think about the volume of money that needs to be raised by senatorial candidates and congressional candidates, they are campaigning for re-election from the moment they are elected initially. And it is a real problem for governing because there's never any space when politics is not foremost in your mind. And so the capacity to compromise, to look simply at policy on the merits, to worry less about sound bites and worry more about the merits, it's really been severely hampered.
Dominic mentioned that there could be trouble ahead even if Hillary Clinton is elected president. So let's play that out a little bit. Let's say the polls hold and Hillary does win the White House. It's very likely that her win would be seen as less of a Clinton win as opposed to a Trump loss. So would she have a mandate to do anything in particular? And would Congress actually continue to obstruct a President Hillary like it did with President Obama? Even if Democrats win the Senate, as Mayor Bramson mentioned, the House will likely remain Republican with some Republicans in swing districts gone, which means a smaller but more conservative GOP in the House. And so, Mr. Mayor, I'll start with you. Isn't she likely to face the same obstruction that President Obama received, and she won't have a clear mandate to do anything?
I think, unfortunately, you may be right. We've seen the dynamic in Washington over the last 4 years, over the last 8 years. And unless there's a Democratic wave even bigger than the one that's indicated in the polls today, she probably will face a divided government come January. My hope is that there will be enough reasonable, middle-of-the-road Republicans, even if it's just a few, who will be interested in governing and not having this kind of perpetual campaign, that there'll be coalitions that can come together around things around which there might theoretically be bipartisan support, like comprehensive immigration reform. But it remains to be seen whether there will be enough Republicans elected who will have the kind of courage necessary to what they themselves believe is right.
But there's one extra problem besides just the political problem is, excuse me, there's an issue with Hillary herself. I mean, she's just didn't lose. It's not that let's just say she wins. It's more that she just didn't lose because the other guy, the other candidate is really a non-candidate.
Right.
But on the other hand, is Hillary a perfect candidate or even close to perfect? Is she a good candidate? She's not a good candidate. She's an imperfect, very imperfect. She's got her own problems. And with all those, emails and WikiLeaks and all this kind of stuff there's reason to kind of, say, Hillary, you got to prove something to us, okay, to get our attention and to get and to build your own credibility, because this election didn't help build her credibility to the American people quite the way Obama had done it in 2 elections.
Well, Dominic, permit me to push back a little bit on that. So as someone who does not regard Hillary as the lesser of 2 evils, but who is genuinely enthusiastic about Hillary, let me say that her history is one of maybe struggling during campaigns because she's not a natural politician the way her husband is, but actually being very popular once she's in office. She was very popular as a senator. She was very popular as Secretary of State. And I think there's every reason to believe that in governing, people will approve of the way that she approaches issues, a no-nonsense style that is all about results, and an ability, counterintuitively, to reach across the aisle and form alliances with Republicans. So I wouldn't count her out, and I also say she's run a better campaign than people give her credit for. She just shellacked her opponent in 3 straight debates. She's put together one of the best presidential campaign organizations in American history. I think she's going to do very well.
I'll just check you on your first 2 points. When she was the senator for New York, she was representing a state that was sort of ideologically aligned with her. That wouldn't be the case if she wins the White House. There's more of a split than there is among New York State. And secretaries of state always have increasing popularity, more so than their presidents do. It's almost universal.
But ditto to the mayor's point. History is on his side. You raised a good point, Brad, in terms about her being a flawed candidate during this campaign, and the proof is in the pudding once she gets to the White House, if that is indeed the case. But to the mayor's point, in fairness to Senator Clinton, remember, before she was Secretary of State, to the mayor's point, there was harsh criticism of her. Carpetbagger. She's not going to fly in New York. Coming out of First Lady, becoming a candidate. She silenced Andrew, all the critics. She went to Washington. She kept, to the mayor's point, she kept her head down, and she formed a coalition with Republicans. And they even begrudgingly gave her credit. So I'm the optimist at the table. I don't know how much any Democrat or any Republican in the Oval Office can get something done, but she does have a history, to the mayor's point, of reaching across the divide.
Look, I'm hopeful as an American. You know, I'm just because I always want the president to do well. Because the president does well, I believe the country does well. That being said, Hillary. The Republicans will be looking at her as, again, a one-term president. Let's do everything we can. Don't give her any wins. Let's do the same playbook. Republicans, only have a few playbooks to choose from, and this is the one that they're going to go back to.
But if that's the playbook that they go with, that we just don't want to give her any victories, then short of Supreme Court nominations, which would only have to go through the Senate, and Democrats might win the Senate, can she get anything passed through Congress? Will she have a mandate to get anything done?
The president, of course, has a relatively free hand when it comes to international affairs. That's important. And I think Obama has demonstrated, much to the dissatisfaction of some Republicans, that through executive action you can do an awful lot. I mean, just think about the climate action plan that he was able to adopt, which is going to have an enormous impact on how we combat global climate change. And I think that may be a model that Hillary Clinton will have to employ, even though I'm sure she would prefer a more traditional legislative approach with an opposition party that's capable of compromise.
But can I also add, and I think that's a really important point, is, that she could win some good favor with the Republicans by doing things first that don't require any legislative action. Again, like international affairs, if she pulls the Republicans in as part of the team, that will help make decisions, and she'll take their input and use it and maybe be able to gain favor that way. And if that's the case, then when it comes to legislative matters, she may be able to get some points back for that.
This is really going to be, in the years ahead, a major test for the Republican Party. I mean, if you assume that the office holders fall into two broad categories, some are the true believers who really subscribe to the nonsense that they might hear on InfoWars or Veritas or any of these other extreme right-wing sites. And others are more rational and moderate, but are frightened of the alt-right Trump supporters who they fear can punish them in primaries. The question is, are they going to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm just going to lead my career being frightened that someone's going to knock me out of office, or am I going to actually do the things I was elected to do and try to govern? And if there are enough of them who are willing to govern, then this could be a very productive 4 or 8 years.
Big governing issue coming up next. Does healthcare reform need reform of its own? Big increases coming in, lots of Obamacare premiums. Is that a problem with the system? And if so, how can it be fixed, and will it be? Stay with us.